Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Yamos Hey Bucks. I'm your host, Drew Sample, joined as always by my good friend and co-host, Mr. Andy Evans. We're at Andy's Wired on Twitter. We're joined by always my favorite beat reporter. I mean, outside of Andy, of course, I love Andy. But besides Andy, Mr. Dillon Davis, my good friend Dillon Davis. Guys, welcome to the show. Sad day, but I mean, I'm not too sad to be honest. But didn't go as planned yesterday. Number 3 Michigan drops number 2 Ohio State in a very good close game, 30-24, third win in a row for those sons of you know what's up north. Ryan Day now 1-3 against the Rodents. Rodents won the turnover and rushing yards battle. McCord had a mixed game. J.J. McCarthy looked very good in the game yesterday. He, for some reason, always looks good against the Buckeyes. Our defense played their hearts out, couldn't stop the Rodents in the second half or on fourth down. Harrison still had a 100-yard game with 1 TD. Did Ryan Day get out coached? We're going to cover all this today. So who's to blame for today's loss? OSU beat the Rodents in total yards battle, 378 to 338, had more first downs, more yards per play, less penalties, better on third down. But just like I said, I was big on this last week with Andy. We just can't turn the ball over against that Michigan defense or against that Michigan team. And we did it twice in really big moments, and it was pretty heartbreaking. So, Dillon, you're the guest, so we'll let you share your disappointment first.
Oh, well. Where do I begin? I think probably the most disappointing thing about the game is it's obviously 3 in a row. It's another spoiled playoff opportunity in all likelihood. But the most disappointing thing was that game was so winnable. I came away from that not impressed whatsoever with Michigan on either side of the ball. I don't think that's a great Michigan team by any stretch. That was such a winnable game for Ohio State, and for them to let that slip away in the manner that they did was very disappointing. Very disappointing, and kind of leaves you wondering, if not now, then when? Because I all year I wasn't sure they could go up there and win that game. I had my doubts. Even driving up there on Saturday morning, I had my doubts that Ohio State could last for 4 quarters. And then after seeing a half of football and after seeing 3 quarters, the game was right there at every stretch. The game was right there for them to take, and then they just didn't make the plays. In a game of this magnitude, it likely, the margins are probably going to be so thin, and it's just about who makes a few more plays. And then that's kind of an old cliche, but it's true. Michigan made a few more plays. Ohio State didn't make those plays. If you think about the field goal before halftime, it's a 52-yarder. I was adamantly against settling for a 52-yarder, but it's a 52-yarder. Jaden Fielding doesn't make it. And, okay, so you go into halftime, you're down 4 instead of down 1. Coming out of halftime, Michigan makes a 50-yarder to stretch their 4-point lead to 7. Made a play. Ohio State didn't make a play. Ohio State turned the ball over twice. Michigan didn't turn the ball over. Just about a handful of plays that Michigan made that Ohio State didn't make, and it came down to that. And then to lose a game like that, just very disappointing. So,
Andy, what were your takeaways?
Yeah, we talked about it last weekend that the one thing you could not do was turn the ball over against that Michigan defense. And the fact that they did twice and their defense did not force a turnover. And the one thing I also said was that they could not let J.J. McCarthy hurt them. And there were several times that defense – their coverage back end was great, and they had him dead to rights, and he just gets out of the pocket, escapes pressure, and on a couple of different occasions, he just made some insane pinpoint throws, including that touchdown to Roman Wilson in the second quarter. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more, but to me, that was the X factor. J.J. McCarthy's magician-like ability to scramble out of the pocket, escape pressure, and then complete these insane pinpoint passes on the run. It was actually kind of amazing to watch. He's been amazing all year. He really has. I hate to say that about a Michigan player, but you've got to give credit where credit is due. And J.J. McCarthy, to me, was kind of the difference. It does not help when your quarterback throws a telegraphed pass to Marvin Harrison when he's got one of the best corners in college football covering him. I mean, Will Johnson knew, dude, this is mine. Like, Kyle McCord stared him down on that entire throw. And Will Johnson knew where it was going. So you start off by giving Michigan a very short field to work with for their first score of the game. And then you end it on another interception. And that one can be dissected and people can say, well, it wasn't his fault. It was his fault. I know there's a lot of blame being thrown around. And I've seen some former Ohio State athletes on social media that are already calling for Ryan Day to go to the transfer portal and look for somebody else because Kyle McCord is not their guy, which I'm sure we'll dissect that a little more. I know we will. But overall, yeah, I mean, it's a tough pill to swallow. 3 in a row now. So I think that the blame can be put on everybody, but we'll get into that a little bit more. But just overall takeaways, yeah, 3 in a row now. It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there was a lot of that. I think that interception. I mean, it looked really bad, but then Kyle McCord did come out and he looked really good after that first pick, and he it seemed like he zoned in. There was a lot of things. I thought that there should have been some timeouts called in that last Michigan drive because our defense clearly looked befuddled. They didn't look as focused, and they weren't executing the way they normally execute. And it's like, call a timeout. They did it in the first half. Defense kind of reset, and they looked a lot better. It was right about the 5-minute mark, and I get it. It's kind of a weird thing where you're trying to, like, play this game with clock control at the end of the game. So it's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. They did just still hold them to 3. There's a lot. I mean, it stings. I mean, it stings to lose to your rival. I mean, that's why rivalry week is so tough. Ryan Day talked about this. We covered it. The turnover battle, McCarthy versus McCord, the rushing battle. Ohio State, 30 pass plays, 28 rushing yards for 107 yards, 1 TD. Michigan, 21 pass plays, 39 rush plays for 156 yards, 2 TDs. Last 22 winners have won the rushing battle. Travion had 19 rushes for 60 yards. Worst on the season, 1 touchdown. Blake Corum, 22 runs, 88 yards, 2 TDs, set a single season school record, beating Anthony Thomas's record, I believe. Ohio State equals their longest run was 12 yards from Chip Trainum, who I tell you what, Chip Trainum actually, it was like he found a way to run through holes. I was actually really impressed with Chip Trainum in that game, and because normally he'll get the ball and he runs right into the lineman, but this one he was finding holes. He was actually making some pretty good plays. Michigan's 4 runs of 14 yards or more. It was 14, 15, 20, and 22. That Corum TD right after Big Zach went out of the game. I saw his parents on the sideline giving a pep talk to the rest of the team, and I was like, oh, man. And I was like, they're really fired up. Blake Corum gets that ball, runs for that big touchdown. It was painful. But all in all, I mean, Blake Corum is a good player. We didn't have it. I don't think we tackled him for a loss once. I don't think he's been tackled for a loss the entire season. We did a very good job of holding him off on the goal line. We couldn't stop him on the force. Sonny Styles had that big tackle in the end zone, and I thought it was in, and then we looked. It was like, oh, no, it's out. Should OSU have run the ball more? Dillon, what do you think? Do you think we ran the ball enough? What do you think about our running game against Michigan?
Well, what I thought about the running game was it wasn't good enough. That's no doubt about it. When you're playing on the road in that atmosphere, in that big of a game, and everything we talk about with Kyle McCord, and then you're going to go out there and give him 107 yards rushing. Like, that's not helping your quarterback at all. That's not helping any quarterback out. But if all these people think that Kyle McCord sucks or he's not the guy or whatnot, the last thing you want to do is go up there and not run the ball, even decently. And 107 yards in that game just not going to cut it. So do I think they should have ran it more? I don't know, maybe so, but the limited success that they were having with it, I'm not sure that was really the right play. I actually thought that at times they should have thrown the ball more. I thought that if ever Ryan Day and Corey Dennis were going to take Brian Hartline, were going to take the kid gloves off of Kyle McCord. I thought after he settled down, after he showed that he was going to play with poise after that initial pick, I thought maybe it was time to let him, sling it a little bit. But so no, I don't really think they should have ran the ball anymore. But certainly the run game was, ineffective by and large. So I was disappointed in that, and certainly I thought the way, and we'll get into Kyle McCord's play, I thought the way that Kyle played, if you just complement that with a decent run game, man, now you're really in business. But that just wasn't good enough on the ground. Ryan said it after the game. Everybody knew it. In that game particularly, running the football is important in every game, but in that game particularly, you just can't run for 107 yards and expect to have a lot of success on offense. So, yeah.
Andy, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, me and Mr. Davis are going to have to disagree here on this one because absolutely they should have run the ball more. Ryan Day said they needed to win the rushing battle, and I felt – and I get it. Michigan, I mean, great defense. They were solid against the run. But if that touchdown drive in the third quarter, their first touchdown of the second half, when they came out and they ran and they ran and they ran, it was the longest drive that they had all game. 12 plays, 75 yards, took 6 minutes off of the clock. And they ran 9 out of those 12 plays, and nearly half of their rushing yards came on that drive. Out of the 107 they ran for the game, like 49 of their total rushing yards came on that one drive alone. And I felt that Ryan wanted to force McCord to help them win the game. And he really should have, like, I agree with you, Dillon, that they should have supplemented Kyle's game with a good rushing attack. And, it's like the old saying goes, just kind of keep trying, keep plugging away, because at some point you're going to break it. Now, I get it. Like, you get into, midway through the third quarter and you've run the ball 30 times and you've got 30 yards. Okay, yeah, now it's time to try something a little bit different. You don't want to continue to try and force a square peg into a round hole. But I felt that after that third quarter scoring drive, that they were finally getting the rushing attack going, and we were going to see more of it. I would love to have seen Dallin Hayden come into the game. We were told after last week's game against Minnesota that he is available. He was available for the Michigan game and any postseason game they go to, and still keep his red shirt. So why didn't we see him yesterday? Like, I get it, Chip was a good Chip probably ran the best I've maybe seen him run all season long. And like you said, he had the longest damn carry of the entire game for 12 yards. And guess what carry that came on? What drive that came on? So I felt that they needed to run the ball more. And instead, they went back kind of to the well. Ryan Day wanted Kyle McCord to be the hero. And, yeah, they just did not supplement his passing game enough with the running attack.
Real quick, I wanted to add on that. So part of like decisions to run the football, whatnot, is flow of game and how the game's being dictated. So I think we would all agree. I think anybody would agree that Ohio State's probably a better passing offense than it is a running offense, just given what we've seen this year. So there were a couple of junctures in that game where that game was quickly slipping away from Ohio State. They were down 14-3 in the first half. They were down 24-14 in the second half. In those moments, if you try to, rely heavily on a running game and you end up punting the ball away quickly, Those could have been knockout points for Ohio State. So I think that probably has something to do with it as well. Ryan Day is going to trust his passing offense, A, because that's just who Ryan Day is, and B, because I think we would agree, maybe at least I would think so, that Ohio State's a better passing offense with the receivers that they have on the perimeter. And if they have to put a drive together, they probably should get the ball in those guys' hands. And there were a couple of junctures where they absolutely had to sustain drives because they were in danger of being knocked out of that football game, both in the first half and the second half. And I think that probably may have had something to do with the lack of run. But going back to Chip Trayanum, you guys are absolutely correct. I mean, that was as good as I've seen Chip Trayanum run since last year's Michigan game when he was thrust into a bigger role with Trey being out, and he ran really well in that first half, and they stopped giving him the ball for whatever reason. So coincidentally, or maybe not coincidentally, Chip Trayanum runs well in the Michigan game. He did it last year. He did it again on Saturday. So I was impressed with him for sure.
JJ McCarthy throws well against Ohio State. Chip Trayanum finds holes in the Michigan game. I think it's like it's easy to kind of point the finger and say I agree with Dillon on both points. Like, we didn't take any shots at the end zone the whole game, and even on, like, there was some times even when we could have, when we would like look pretty good, we'd get a first down, a short pass. So let's get into I kind of skipped the turnover battle, and that really is kind of on the passing game here. So the turnover battle, obviously we already covered that he lost, but McCord, I mean, 18 for 30, 271 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He was only sacked 1 time. I liked seeing McCord. I did notice he did something that he hasn't really done, which is step up in the pocket. Like when the pocket started, and he made some big plays, and so you do see the progress of McCord. And I think there is all this pressure because we are juiced at receiver. It's like, well, Marv's is going to probably be gone. Book is probably going to be gone, but we're still going to have really good guys coming up. And I think it's kind of the season where we're at. I think that, I think Kyle McCord did put us in a bad situation. I think, there's a lot of woulda, shoulda, couldas, but at the same time, like, I would have liked to see him make some more shots, like take some deep shots, or let's have an idea like, hey, let's take a deep ball. Let's try to have our guys beat their guys, especially at the end, because the really good guy that got that first pick, he wasn't even playing at the end of the game. So I think he got injured too. So let's talk about quarterback play. Andy, we'll start with you. What did you think overall quarterback play? Do you think McCord is to blame for the loss?
You don't throw 2 interceptions in the game. One, once again, sets up Michigan's first score on an extremely short field, and then the one that essentially ends the game, and not sit here and say that there's at least some level of blame to put on Kyle McCord. I think, unfortunately, the Kyle McCord that we saw, it was Jekyll and Hyde Kyle McCord, and we've seen this all year, where one play he's missing the read and an open receiver, and he's throwing into double coverage, and for the most part was largely lucky throughout the year that those balls weren't getting picked off. Penn State, Minnesota, Notre Dame, those are 3 games just right off the top of my head I can think of where he made just a baffling decision to try and thread needles into double coverage, and they were simply knocked down rather than getting picked off. You can't throw the ball like that at times, like we said last weekend, against a stout defense and expect to kind of get away with it like you did against lesser quality opponents. But there were times that, yes, Kyle McCord was making these throws. Like you said, he stepped up in the pocket a couple of times to escape pressure and made good throws. And you want to know what? Coulda, woulda, shoulda. But that 3rd and 5 pass that he put on the money, first drive of the game, to Emeka Egbuka, and Egbuka dropped a sure-handed first down. Who knows what could have happened on that drive? They mosey down the field and they score somehow, at least get a field goal, kind of that momentum. So there were plays like that too that, quite frankly, were not completely his fault. So Jekyll and Hyde, I think some of the blame needs to be put on Kyle McCord, but not all of it. It was not entirely his fault that they lost that game. Yeah, and once again, yeah, defense and this. We'll get into that, but no, you cannot squarely put this loss on his shoulders. That's not fair.
Dillon, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, when you're talking about the element of blame, like there's too much blame to go around the Ohio State team in this game to say that any one person or any one unit or any one side of the ball is to blame or any one coach is to blame. There are and Kyle McCord's play had a part in that blame. So I'll preface everything I'm about to say by saying like the first quarter pick is inexcusable. It just can't happen in any football game. It sure as hell can't happen in that football game. And it was indicative of the kind of things we've seen from Kyle all year. His biggest issue is that Kyle predetermines throws in his head when he takes a snap. There was never a chance in hell that he was going anywhere else but to throw that ball to Marv out there. He knew that. Will Johnson knew that. And you can't make that throw. And it's just what Kyle does. He predetermines these throws. He doesn't see the field well. He wipes off half the field because he's already predetermined and that he's going to go to one side or the other. So those are the things that have been issues for Kyle. Those are the things that I assume he's going to start again next year. Bad news, Buckeye fans. Anybody who thinks that all of a sudden Devin Brown, who didn't beat him out this year, is all of a sudden going to take over now. No, Kyle's going to probably start next year, and they're not going to the transfer portal, or should they? There's nobody out there, at least not right now today. There is nobody in that transfer portal that's better than Kyle McCord. Flat out, no. I saw people talking about Will Rogers from Mississippi State. Like, are people insane? Like that? Is like I don't like people are. I guess they're just so fed up in their hatred for Kyle McCord. They're talking about Will Rogers being the guy to come to Ohio State, like he's better than Kyle McCord. Like, just go look at his stat line, watch him play. Did you watch the Egg Bowl on Thursday? It's just crazy. But anyways, get back to Kyle McCord. So that pick, first quarter, inexcusable, bad, no doubt about it. I'm not making any excuses for that. But he really settled down after that and played with a ton of poise. All year we've heard about Kyle never getting rattled, and he's the same guy no matter what happens and whatnot. And for the most part, I was like kind of always just shrugged it off, like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, he showed it in the Notre Dame game, but I always thought, what would happen if he did that in Ann Arbor in this game? Well, he proved that he really is. That's all true. He really is the same old guy. He doesn't change. For better or for worse, he just doesn't change. And on Saturday, that was very beneficial because a lot of quarterbacks would have just kind of unraveled after a play like that in that game for as bad as it was and directly leading to Michigan getting points. But he settled down. And made big throws. In every touchdown drive, he made big throws. And on the final drive of the game, he made big throws. Everybody wants to take 2 turnovers, and I think that's just absolutely unfair to Kyle McCord because that second interception was not on him. I mean, he had a guy in his face. I think he actually got hit as he was throwing it. Donovan Jackson got absolutely ran over. I mean, trucked on that play. And that guy got in Kyle's face and probably maybe even got contact too that caused that ball to come up well short of Marvin Harrison, who I think was open too. If I'm not mistaken, I think he was open on the play. So to say he threw 2 picks, I don't think that's really fair. The first one was absolutely 100% obviously on him, and it was bad. But I don't think he threw 2 picks in the sense that that was just a bad decision that he can't make. Not at all. But the second quarter touchdown drive, which was huge, again, talking about a juncture in which Ohio State was in danger of being knocked out of that football game early. It was 14-3. He goes 4 for 4 on that drive. I think he had a 32-yarder or something like that to Stover that really started the drive. Big throw, and it got that drive going. They ended up going down there and scored and cutting that lead to 4. Just a very big moment in that game. And the same thing happened in the third quarter too. That drive that Ohio State ran the football on the last 9 plays or whatever, monster drive, once again came in a very, important spot. And he had completions of, I think, 14 and 15 yards to start that drive. So once again, came up in some important spots. And then the fourth quarter touchdown, he had to throw to Fleming. Fleming just made a hell of a play on that. Credit to Julian Fleming. And then the final drive, I think it was like 22 yards and 21 yards, the first 2 completions that got them into Michigan territory. I mean, they were into Michigan territory quickly. And for as bad as the Michigan secondaries looked in recent weeks, and they weren't that great on Saturday either. Who knows if Donovan Jackson doesn't get absolutely ran over and that guy doesn't affect Kyle's throw? Who knows? I mean, they were gonna. I think Marvin Harrison makes that play. I think absolutely. I think the throw didn't have to be perfect. It just had to be decent, and Marvin Harrison's going to make a play. And they're down to the 20-yard line with like 22 seconds left. Very much in business. I mean, there were a lot of. There were, at least in the people sitting around me and myself, there were a lot of Notre Dame game vibes going on that drive. And then Donovan Jackson just gets ran over, and that's that. So I thought Kyle really settled down. I thought that the first quarter pick was bad, and it really hurt them early on, but at the end of the day, they recovered from it. So to say like that pick got to be, no, it didn't, because they recovered from it. They went into halftime down 4, very much in the football game. They tied the game up in the second half, so they didn't get beat because of that. They recovered from that. It was bad, and you don't want to give away points, and it didn't help, obviously, but they didn't get beat because of that. They recovered from that, and he made some plays that really gave him a chance to win the game, which is, I think, what all anybody could have asked for from Kyle McCord in that game. If you would have asked me on Thursday, what do you want from Kyle McCord? I said, well, don't turn the ball over, obviously, and just have a chance to make plays in the second half to win the game. And they had that chance, and they didn't do it. They didn't get it done, but they had that chance. So, mixed bag, but I didn't think that he cost them a chance to win the football game. I think quite the opposite. I think he gave them a chance to win the football game in the second half. So,
that pick hurt, and it was also like looking back. So let's say Kyle just takes a sack there, the clock's running down, like. Can we recover? Can guys get back? Like there was a lot. I mean, like, no, I mean, and I agree with you. There's too much blame to kind of go around. So, speaking of which, let's get to our defense. Did the defense do enough? We got 1 sack from Big Jack Sawyer. We only had 2 tackles for a loss. Couldn't contain J.J. McCarthy. Tommy Eichenberg had his first game back and was tied for second on the team with 7 tackles and also missed a few. We allowed the Rodents to convert on all 3 of 4th downs they attempted. First 4th converted was Corum TD run, 4th and 1, after McCord's first pick. Next 2 4th downs were both 4th and 1 on their second scoring drive that gave the Rodents the 14-3 lead. Dillon, what were your thoughts of the defense and how they played yesterday?
Well, you want to talk about blame to go around. I thought this was a single thing that really, cost them the football game. And I thought it was the most disappointing thing of everything that transpired in that game. I thought it was the most disappointing thing. I to not get a single stop in the second half, and Jim Knowles, he values stop rates over any other stat in college football. He said it a couple weeks ago, talking about it when we were talking with him, stop rates, which is just simply, did you prevent them from getting points or not? Because a lot of other things can be misleading. You can be ranked highly in this, but still not be a good defense, or you're still giving up points and things like that. And it's true. Stop rate's a very important stat, because it's just the whole goal of the defense is to prevent points. And that's it. Did you get off the field without giving up points? And they failed, like categorically failed in that sense in the second half on Saturday. And this stat is insane. I saw this from somebody on Twitter. I can't remember who it was now, but I saw this from somebody on Twitter, and it was just jaw dropping. But then when you think about it, yeah, it makes sense. Ohio State's given up points on 12 of 13 second half possessions against Michigan the last 3 years. Only 1 time did they not give up points on a drive the last 3 years in the second half. That is insane. And it's not a surprise because of the defenses the last 2 years, but like, I think anybody thought that this was a different unit this year. We thought, things were better. That's not a great Michigan offense. It's just not. I know J.J. McCarthy made some nice throws, and he came up big, and when he had to. There's no doubt about that. But just overall, I don't think he was anything special on Saturday, and I didn't think the running game was anything special. And they just couldn't find a way to get off the field in the second half, and it's inexcusable. It's inexcusable. You talk about, if Kyle McCord gave you a chance to win, and that offense, Ohio State offense, gave them a chance to win, and they did. They kept them in the game. Who had that, on their bingo sheet, that Ohio State's offense would keep them in the game in the second half, while the defense couldn't get stops? That's totally flip-flopped in how we thought that the game would need to go for Ohio State to win the game. And that's how it went. If Ohio State doesn't get, some points there in the second half, they get blown out again because that defense wasn't getting a stop. And that's just, it's inexcusable. And I think most I think I was probably most disappointed with the linebackers, actually. So you could talk about Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers being up there near or at the top of the lead in tackles and whatnot, but they were absolutely lost in coverage. I mean, Michigan's tight ends had, I think, 7 combined for 7 catches. Colston Loveland had like 88 yards. I mean, they had no chance against those tight ends. That was a mismatch all day long, and it was a critical mismatch. If you talk about J.J. McCarthy, and he came into this game struggling too, and I see a lot of people talking about pedestrian Kyle McCord. If you want to look at pedestrian, in my opinion, J.J. McCarthy is pedestrian. Now, again, those legs, and you were absolutely right, Andy, that was what scared me about that defense, is his ability to extend plays or make plays, and he killed Ohio State with that. So in that element, yeah, it was absolutely. But J.J. McCarthy as a drop back passer, or a guy who's just going to burn you and go win a game of that magnitude with his arm. No, he is pedestrian in that sense. And yet that tight end was just a safety valve all day for J.J. McCarthy, because they had no shot at covering those guys. And Colston Loveland's he's a good tight end. Don't get me wrong. He's a very good tight end. I think he's going to be a Mackey Award finalist. He's good. But they had no shot against him, none. And he just killed him time and time again. And then obviously the last drive of the game, a 7-minute drive. And they never took any chances. Ohio State's defense never took any chances. I don't know. I don't know what Jim Knowles and just his entire coaching staff, what they thought, or if they just assumed that, like, okay, yeah, well, there's a first down. Oh, shoot, that's going to take up more time. But we'll get a stop here, and whatnot. And then just Michigan just kept on coming at them, and J.J. McCarthy would make a big throw. Again, I'm not taking anything away from J.J. McCarthy in the sense that he made some big plays, absolutely made big plays. But then they make a throw, and now the drive extended. Next thing you know, this is a 7-minute drive. And then they got the stop. Sure, they did the very bare minimum that they had to do, and then force a field goal after 7 minutes, and make Ryan Day have to call his timeouts and give the offense a minute to get down the field. So just like a categorical failure for the Ohio State defense in the second half. I don't know, there's no two ways about it. And for that to be in my opinion, one of the biggest reasons they lost that football game is, wow, just wildly disappointing, because I did not have that. I thought that if they were going to win the game, they'd lean heavily on that defense, and they played well in the first half. I'm not saying that they were bad. They played well in the first half, but they just didn't get it done. And again, that stat about once again not getting a stop in the second half is it's hard to win like that. It's just hard to win like that.
Andy, what were your takeaways?
Yeah, Colston Loveland and A.J. Barner combined 7 of their 17 catches for 103 of their 182 yards. So, yeah, not quite half of their catches were to the tight ends, but over half of their yards. And Colston Loveland was their leading receiver with 5 catches for 88 yards. Yeah, Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers. I mean, Eichenberg was a shell of himself yesterday. And I had a buddy text me and say, this is why I did not want to see Eichenberg out last weekend against Minnesota. Because to have him sit 2 games in a row and not at least get out there and have a half of football against Minnesota to kind of tune himself back up for the Michigan game was a mistake. And honestly, I think we saw that yesterday. Eichenberg missed. I counted at least two times where he flopped down at the either the running back or McCarthy or tight end or whoever, Michigan offender. Whoever had the ball, he was just kind of falling at their feet, trying to dive after him and just hitting the turf. And then there was one play in particular where Colston Loveland, he just bounced right off of Colston Loveland, just bounced off of him like Loveland was made of brick and steel. And Eichenberg just doink, it looked bad. Eichenberg, 7 tackles, sure. Steele, 13 tackles, a career high. But to your point, Dillon, absolutely agree. There was one play in particular, I believe it was Loveland, where he kind of cut out and in. I believe it was like that, 18-yard gain that Loveland had that extended one of their drives. In fact, I think it was the fourth and 1. If I'm not mistaken, it was that 4th down where Loveland kind of cut up and cut in, and Steele just let him run right by him. Didn't even, just let Loveland go right by him, and there was nobody in the middle of the field to back him up. And that, there you go. There's part of the blame. Steele, Chambers, and Tommy Eichenberg. I think Steele looked worse in pass coverage than Tommy did. There was a couple times I saw Tommy sink back into the middle of the field and was doing a good job for the most part, but his tackling was off. Steele Chambers' coverage was bad. And when the defense does not get a stop in the entire second half, and yes, one of those drives was 4 minutes long. Let me see here. That last drive to get that kind of, it wasn't the game-sealing field goal because it only put him up by 6, but a 7-minute drive, ate up a bunch of clock. The drive before was 4 minutes. And you technically did not stop them from scoring in the second half. Yeah. And if that's Jim Knowles' measuring stick as far as how successful his defense is, then and Dillon, maybe you can attest to this as far as what Knowles had to say in the postgame presser. You were there. I unfortunately was not. But, did Jim Knowles, was he asked that? Did he say anything about that? Because I would at least give a little bit of credit to the defense in this regard. Of those 4 drives in the second half, 3 of them did end in field goals. They could have been a lot worse and ended in touchdowns, but the Buckeyes bend but don't break. And I know, Jimmy, you don't like that analogy. And if the stop rate means not letting them score at all, and that's all you're concerned about, then you definitely failed in the second half. But at least me, I'm looking at it, well, giving up 3 points is better than giving up 7. And so instead of potentially giving up 28 points in the second half, they gave up 16, but still, they didn't make a stop. But I am curious, Dillon, as to whether or not Jim Knowles was asked about, a bend don't break, or hey, do you feel like even though you didn't let them score touchdowns, was holding them to a field goal successful? I think we all know the answer to that, but I'm just curious if Jim Knowles was asked that or not, and if he was, what his response was.
Yeah, so we got just maybe a few questions in the Jim Knowles. Everything was very rushed after that game, as you can imagine, as bullshit as it may be, that they were trying to get out of there. And I'm sure I know nobody wanted to sit up there and field questions from us, and I understand that, but also it's part of the gig. So we just got a few questions in the Jim Knowles. I can't recall specifically. I don't think he was asked about the bend but don't break thing. That's something that will certainly come up this offseason or whenever we get a chance to talk to him again. But I don't think he was asked about that yesterday. Just kind of some of the general, questions and responses that you could probably think of off the top of your head right now, and the answers were very predictable. So there will be a time and a place to really dive into, why they didn't get the job done in the second half on Saturday. When I say that it was a categorical failure in the second half, I guess I want to kind of modify what I'm saying is, in the first half, like I said, I thought they played well in the first half, and obviously that first touchdown, not a whole lot you can do there. Those sudden changes, as they're called in football games, are very, very tough on defenses. And then for it to be on the 7-yard line, that's to have held them to 3 points would have been, remarkable. I put nothing on them for that open touchdown. The opening touchdown. And then, they play out the rest of the half and give up 7 points. So, I thought they played well in the first half. And I even thought that they, early on, the opening field goal in the second half, okay, fine, whatever. I've always said this: not every stop or not every scoring drive is created equally. It might be equal, points on the scoreboard, but for the feel of the game and the momentum and the change in the game, not everyone's created equally. And when Ohio State went down the field and put together just a great drive to tie the game up at 17 in the second half, for that defense to immediately respond by allowing Michigan to go down the field and score a touchdown to regain a 7-point lead, do you know how deflating that is on a sideline? that Ohio State had finally captured all momentum in a game that they were playing uphill for most of that game up to that point because of that pick six, or not pick six. I'm sorry, but the interception deep in Ohio State's territory. They were playing uphill, and for them to go tie that game up at 17 in the second half, to feel like all momentum was on their sideline, to feel like they were starting to take control of this game, and then for your defense, who has been, your heart and soul all year long, the thing that you've relied on, to watch them go give up a touchdown, and now you're down 7 again, and now you're playing uphill again. You know how deflating that is, and so that it's not just that they gave up the points on the drives. It's the timing of it, and you're right. It could have been a lot worse. They could have given up touchdowns on some of those field goal drives, and then the game's probably differently, because I don't know how many answers Ohio State's offense had in it. It seemed like however many they had, they used every one of them, and there were times where I just didn't think they would answer, and they found another one. So I imagine they were probably running out sooner rather than later, those answers from the Ohio State offense. But they did get field goals. They did force field goals. But at the end of the day, they needed stops. They needed to keep them off the scoreboard. They needed to get their offense back on the field with a chance to go take a lead. And they just didn't have enough of those opportunities in the second half, flat out.
And that's that's a great point, Dillon, about them giving up the touchdown to Corum, where, Zach Zinter, and after that, it seemed like, here we go. That just gave them some extra juice. I mean, they were already plugging their way down the field at that point, and then that just, not revitalized them, but vitalized them even more. That was probably the worst defense I've seen Ohio State play all year, because now all of a sudden, Buckeye Nation is like, holy crap. We were down 14-3. We have now tied up this ball game. There is that yes, we are back in this, and damn it, come on, defense. To your point, Dillon, you've been playing great all game. You've got another one in you. And then they completely pooped all over themselves and allowed that scoring drive. And that was an absolute kick in the balls. And even though Ohio State's offense kept fighting, and even though Ohio State's defense still, the next two drives, they kind of locked down and they held Michigan to field goals, that was probably, I would say, the game clincher right there. And even then, the next drive, Ohio State couldn't do anything, had to punt. And then, they go down the field and they're up by 10. And now it's like you're back to square one. So that drive that Michigan answered with in the third quarter, that was huge. And once again, to me, J.J. McCarthy, even though, yes, I agree that as far as a pocket passing, drop back, stand there, look around, and throw the ball, for the most part, he is an average quarterback. But that pass to Roman Wilson, where he put it in between frickin' Denzel Burke and Malik Hartford, who Hartford had gotten turned around, came up a little bit too far in coverage. But the way he put it in there, I mean, that throw was insane. And the one thing that Ohio State allowed J.J. McCarthy to do was scramble away from pressure and make some throws. To me, he really was the X factor in that game. Now, am I going to draft J.J. McCarthy if I'm an NFL, GM and expect him to come in and be, starting rookie right away? Absolutely not. He's not that kind of NFL quarterback as far as I'm concerned. He's going to get drafted, but the way that he played and responded in certain points during the game gave Ohio State's defense fits. They did not do what I was hoping they would do and really put pressure on him and sack him, or at least tackle him in the backfield, hit him. I don't know if Ohio State's defense, let me look this up real quick, if they even had two quarterback hits. They did have two quarterback hits, one of them being a sack. Otherwise, they really didn't get to him fast enough and really plant him in the turf. And because that's the thing. The quarterback can complete a pass, but if you get to him at just the right second, hit him without drawing a late hit penalty, just hitting him, that contact contact, and Ohio State really wasn't able to do it. And that in those ways, to me, the defense failed, and you failed to force a turnover at some point. So throw all of those things together, and that was not a great defensive performance, for sure.
Exactly what Andy said. Real quick, sorry. They failed to force a turnover. If there has been one thing that has held this defense back all year, it's been the fact that they don't force a lot of turnovers. They haven't done it all year, everybody wants to force turnovers. If it was that easy, every damn defense would do it. They do it 2 or 3 times a game because who doesn't love turnovers? They're big moments in games. But however you generate turnovers, they just didn't this year. And in a game like that, you really need to generate at least one. Find one somewhere. Strip sack. That goes back to the pressure that they didn't have. So that's killer. And I think I said if there's one thing the defense hasn't done this year, it's turn the ball over, and they didn't do it again on Saturday. So
yeah, the defense didn't score enough points this year, and they didn't take the ball away. That was the big thing I said last week when Andy and I show is we need to not turn the ball over. We need the defense to get takeaways, and we didn't do it. They came up short. So. Speaking of which, one of the things I said was something Ryan Day could have done in the second half, especially that fourth quarter, was take a timeout on the defensive side of the ball to try to reset, see what's going on. Why are we just letting them walk all over us? Why aren't we pressuring? Like, get a little reset, get those guys fired up. Didn't happen. So is it time to fire Ryan Day? He's John Cooper Jr. He can't beat Michigan, even though he only loses to Michigan, it seems like. Did Michigan's assistant coach Sharon Moore outcoach Ryan Day? What do you guys think about this? I mean, did Day pucker up? There was, even during the game, I'm watching it with some Michigan fans right on the border in Sylvania, Ohio, and I remember in the first quarter, my cousin, big Michigan fan, was scared. Was like, we are on our own 46, 4th and 1, 9:37 left in the first quarter. I think we're at the time we're only down 7-0, and we punt on that 4th and 1 when we could have or actually we might not even turn the ball over yet. I'm trying to remember when that took place. But my cousin, the Michigan fan, said, "Why aren't you guys going for it? Like, isn't this the time to get this first down and kind of really start to assert your dominance on Michigan?" And I was okay with the punt personally, just because it's early in the game, and I feel like we take a lot of. I didn't want us to take a risky play and give Michigan good field position. And then again, 4th and 2 in the fourth quarter. Michigan's 34 near the end of the second quarter. I'm sorry, not the fourth quarter, the second quarter. We like to kick that 52-yard field goal. Fielding misses it. Is it time for Ryan to go? Is he in the hot seat? Who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Andy.
We'll go you, Andy.
All right. So let me say this. First of all, we were kind of talking about this beforehand, and this is going to be a hot debate between people on social media, Buckeye Nation, us journalists, and if I'm not mistaken, Dillon, I believe you said that, or somebody said before we started recording, that he was not outcoached by Sharon Moore. I personally feel that he was. Sharon Moore, once again, they went for it 3 times on 4th down, twice on the same drive that gave them their second touchdown of the game, which was thrown to Roman Wilson, which may or may not have been a catch, juggled, interception. That's going to be one of those plays that'll be up for debate for years to come. Did Denzel Burke truly strip it out or not? I don't know, but you can't go back and change things. It is what it is. That's kind of aside. The fact that he seemed to pucker up a little bit. I really do feel that Ryan Day puckered up. And there have been times where, was it a fake punt? Was it not? What happened there? And Ryan Day's deflecting, and the ball slipped, and that was not this, and we didn't mean to do that, and all this kind of stuff. And there have been some times where he's gone for it on 4th down where we're like, what in the world are you doing? And they got stuffed. However, you're in the last game of the year. you're in the last game of the year, man. Just go for the gusto. Don't pucker up. Sharon Moore was not afraid to go for it on fourth down 3 different times, both of which resulted in touchdowns, or all 3 of which technically. Yeah, I feel like he was outcoached. I mean, that trick play between Donovan Edwards and or the trick play they ran with Donovan Edwards to start the fourth quarter, where it was a halfback pass, it ended up going for like 34 yards. That was the kind of stuff we should have seen out of Ryan Day. 4th and 1 on your own 46. I get what you're saying, Drew. There was a part of me that was like, okay, I don't mind seeing the punt here. But then again, and maybe this is easier to say in hindsight because of the way the game ended. You know what? Just yank up your trousers, man. As long as they're not khakis, yank up your trousers and just grab them tight and say, you know what? Screw this. I'm going for it. Let's get weird. That's I think Ryan Day puckered up. I think Sharon Moore outcoached him. And but once again, easy to say that in hindsight. Ohio State ends up winning the game at the very end. Kyle McCord doesn't throw a pick. They score the game-winning, score a touchdown, kick the game-winning extra point, and they win 31-30. Then we can say, no big deal. It was the right call, but hey, they lost. Who knows? It coulda, woulda, shoulda. If they had gone for it on 4th and 1, and that was their second drive of the game, Michigan had yet to score. Who knows what could have happened, but coulda, woulda, shoulda. Ultimately, I do feel like he was outcoached by Sharon Moore.
Dillon, what's your thoughts?
Just say it, man. Just say it. Give it back to me, baby.
Well, I guess
give it to me.
No, and it's not. I guess when we're talking about the 4th down conversions and things like that, the nature of that, I would just ask you to go look at where they were at in the field when Sharon Moore decided to go out for it on 4th down. It's a lot easier to make that decision when you're at the 35 and you're thinking, we're on fringe field goal range here, or are we in our own territory here? And if we don't get this, then we're giving the ball in plus territory in a game that we're already playing uphill on. So I think fans in general, and I mean not just fans, but I think everybody has this aggressive nature in football because to us it's not really consequential. We always I'm guilty of it sometimes. So oh hell, go for it, go for it. And we're not thinking about the things that coaching staff's thinking about in terms of if we don't get this, what that means for this, that, and the other. We're just thinking man, touchdowns are big here, or this would be a big drive or whatever. Just go for it. And I think it's easy to say that, but going for it in your own territory and in the first half of that game, I think would have been very, very ballsy, I guess. I mean, and if that's how you weigh being outcoached because one coach was more ballsy than the other, then fine. Then in that sense, I guess, Sharon Moore outcoached Ryan Day. But when it comes to things like halfback passes, I just know for a fact that if Ryan Day attempted a halfback pass and it went poorly, the Ohio State fans would just have an absolute meltdown. They would shit their pants right there instantly. If they saw a halfback pass in the Michigan game in Ann Arbor that went poorly, they would shit themselves. If he threw a pick, if they tossed the ball to Trey and he threw a ball, but it didn't throw a good one and it got picked off, or he threw it to somebody's feet or whatnot, people would just lose their minds. And so I guess if being ballsy is your measure of who coached the game better, then Sharon Moore won that without a doubt. There's a fine line between being ballsy and just being stupid. Obviously, we know that's the life of a coach. They Les Miles, they always called him the riverboat gambler. He had a knack for just calling these kind of things at the perfect time, and they worked. And he was lauded for it, and everybody loved him for it. But there are other times where coaches make these decisions and get them fired. I'm not saying that would have happened with Ryan Day. I'm just saying they make these decisions like that and they don't pay off. These gambles don't pay off, and the reaction's quite different. So I guess there's a fine line in that, but that's not how I'm going to assess who had who outcoached who in that game just by Sharon Moore going for it on 4th down several times in plus territory, and good for him that they did it. But I don't think Ryan Day, called a particularly strong game. I'm not sitting here saying that Ryan Day outcoached Sharon Moore. I don't know if that's necessarily true or not. But the field goal before halftime, I was adamant that they should have tried to get more yardage there. I didn't like settling for a 52-yard field goal with 22 seconds still on the clock. Ryan was asked about it after the game, and everybody knew right then and there what he was doing. He just didn't want Michigan to have any chance of getting the ball back. But with 22 seconds on the clock and Michigan still had 2 timeouts, I think you trust your defense there, but that if you don't get it, that they're not going to go give up, probably 40 yards, 35 yards to give Michigan a field goal opportunity right before the half in 22 seconds, regardless of your 2 timeouts. 22 seconds, a couple of plays is going to take, probably most of that. So you should have trusted your defense there to not settle for that field goal. And if you can pick up another, 5 or 6 yards, that field goal is much more manageable. And it was a big swing in that game. What could have been a 1-point game turned into a 4-point game at halftime, and Michigan extends it to 7 out of the half. So that was a kind of a big juncture in the game, and I didn't agree with it at all. So I think that was the one time where I, just thought that's not. It's not playing to win, from Ryan Day. It's not playing to win. And I think that's maybe if I have the biggest issue sometimes is with Ryan Day through the years is that sometimes I didn't feel like he, was necessarily playing to win. I don't want to say he's playing to lose either, but he wasn't necessarily playing to win. That Georgia game, we saw that they just aired it all out. They were just going to go play to win, throw caution to the wind for better or worse. And we saw how that played out. It nearly worked for him. But that doesn't mean that every game is that situation where you just throw caution win, because again, that would get your ass fired in a hurry if that's just the way you approached every big football game. So, maybe it's not good enough that he just kind of coached evenly with Sharon Moore. Maybe that in of itself is an indictment because he is an interim coach. Although I have to remind people that this team was prepared all week by Jim Harbaugh. So while Sharon Moore was, pulling the strings on game day, this team, Michigan, showed up prepared to play because their normal week of practice wasn't any different. So I thought Ohio State was ready to play. I thought Ohio State played, was showed up ready to play, and they were fired up, and I thought they approached the game appropriately. So there were a couple calls, and there's always going to be a couple calls that maybe I didn't agree with. But yeah, I don't value one coach taking a bunch of chances and them happen to work out for him, and calculated chances too, again, because they were all in plus territory. I don't really value that as then that means he outcoached Ryan Day. But now the whole question about Ryan Day in this game, and we can get into that here in a second, but I just don't think he got outcoached. But that doesn't mean there weren't plenty of issues with Ryan Day in general, with the whole feel of this game and everything that it means.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of things that I didn't like that I saw. I felt like but again, who knows what's what? I think it's hard to say that Sharon Moore outcoached him when it was clearly him just trying to execute Jim Harbaugh's prepared game plan. And Harbaugh's watching the game. Who knows? He could have had a headset on. He could have had a headpiece in his ear. Michigan, they're a bunch of cheaters, right? But anyway, I'm just joking, but not really. But I think it's easy to point fingers. Ultimately, we got blown out the last 2 years. This year, we were right in it at the very end. And, things didn't go our way. We didn't execute as well as Michigan did when it came down to it. Michigan executed very well most of the game, and we did not. And it hurts. And you learn a lot more from losses than you do wins. And unfortunately, whenever we play Michigan, it's always the most painful because it's the end of the year, and we have this silly 4-game playoff. If this is next year, nobody's really upset because we're in the playoff, or we're going to play Michigan in the Big Ten championship. However, this new football is going to work out, but we're not in that. So now we can all say we need to fire a coach that has lost 7 times, has never lost a Big Ten game except for 3 against Michigan. His only losses mainly have been in playoff games or a national championship, or one time we lost to Oregon. So I think it's just silly. I think OSU fans are acting a little bit entitled. Spoiled brats didn't get their way. So whenever they say, "Oh, this happened," and yeah, I've been there too. I'm going to be there too right now, and I'm talking about postseason projections where I think a bunch of damn magic's going to happen, and because I don't think any of these teams around are that good. Listen, I bet Auburn fans are a lot more upset today than we are, or Florida fans. Florida had that game and then that stupid targeting hit right on a slide. It was just a blatant penalty. Florida should have beat Florida State. Auburn definitely should have beat Alabama. So let's get into postseason projections. Dillon, you think we're making the playoffs? You think it's over, right? It's done. I'm just teasing.
Yeah, I mean,
What-
we were talking about this pre-show. I mean, the window is. I mean, it couldn't be any more shut without being fully shut. There's, I guess we talked about the path forward, but it's highly, highly, highly unlikely. And if it happens, good for Ohio State. We saw last year, a team that found a way to get in, and they had a chance to beat Georgia. Probably should have beat Georgia, and if they do, I feel confidently, as most people probably did, that they would have went on to win a national championship. I think just like that this year, I don't think any of those teams. There's not a team out there that I'd be like, wow, Ohio State can't go beat that team. Please don't match up with that team. I don't know how that's going to go. There's not a single team out there that I would think that. If they find a way to get in, good for them, and I think that they would play well against anybody. But I just don't see all those things happening. I know we can sit here and say crazier things have happened and crazier things have happened, but I just don't. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's going to happen or that it's even likely to happen or that yeah.
Yeah, you need a bunch of craziness to make this happen. I mean, yesterday you needed Alabama to get beat by Auburn, which should have happened and would have happened if Auburn doesn't allow a touchdown pass with under 1 minute to go on 4th and goal from the 31-yard line, and they give up a touchdown. I mean, that was just, ridiculous. But you needed Auburn to beat Alabama, then Alabama to beat Georgia and be a 2-loss conference champ, because we all know how the committee feels about putting in a 2-loss conference champ. They don't like it. You need, which at this point now, you need Georgia to beat Alabama, because you don't want a 1-loss conference champion to win, because if Alabama beats Georgia, they're in. They're a conference champion with 1 loss, and that looks better than Ohio State's 1 loss being a non-conference champion. Same with Texas. Ohio State has to ask Oklahoma State to beat Texas, and the two teams haven't played each other this year, so that'll be an interesting matchup. Oklahoma State beats Texas. Oklahoma State is now a 2-loss conference champion. Now you've got to ask Louisville, who's just coming off of a loss to their arch rival at home, to 6-5 Kentucky, to turn around and beat a Florida State team who looks very beatable, which it would have been nice to see Florida State lose last night to Florida. And then either Louisville or Florida State wins the ACC, and it doesn't matter, because at that point you've got a 2-loss conference champion. But Florida State pulls it out, and now you've got to ask Louisville to beat Florida State and be a 2-loss conference champion. And at this point, so Georgia,
you need Washington.
Honestly, Washington needs to beat Oregon, because if Oregon wins, Oregon's a 1-loss conference champion, and they're in, right? So Georgia needs to win, Michigan needs to win, and Washington needs to win. Louisville needs to win. Oklahoma State needs to win. And that's probably about the best scenario right now, that if you're an Ohio State fan and you're still holding out hope that the Buckeyes can make it into the playoff, that's honestly what I believe you need to have fall in line. And that's a lot to ask. And when you're depending upon other teams to get you to where you need to be, when you're depending on somebody else, we talked with our producer, Mr. Adam Dell, and he said, look, just get the damn job done yourself, and then you don't have to rely on others to get the job done for you. And he's absolutely right. So, But I mean, there is still an outside shot. Am I holding out hope? No. This is what I am expecting. Ohio State's still going to go play in a New Year's Six game. Is it the Orange Bowl? Is it the Fiesta Bowl? Is it the Peach Bowl? Do they go back to Atlanta? I don't know. We'll see. They're going to go up and, they're going to play probably a top 10 team. But the drawback to that is we're probably going to see several Buckeyes sit out in that game. And the only, I guess, thing that you could say is a positive in that is that we'll get a preview into next year's team and what that might look like. So that's what I think at this point is going to happen.
Yeah, I think either way, I think when we first came on, you guys thought Buckeyes are going to be a 3-loss team. Buckeyes really did 2-loss team. Yeah, Andy did. You thought it'd be a 2-loss.
Oh, what the hell's that?
I don't know. That was somehow you had some balloons.
If I do it again,
anyways,
Dylan's partying over there, man.
that was awesome. I mean, I think the Buckeyes, though, they did perform well. I mean, it stings to lose to Michigan. We didn't lose the same way we did. We're not the same team that we thought should just dominate everybody. I mean, every week it was like, the Buckeyes played their best. They played their best. They exceeded expectations. Unfortunately, against the team that we wanted them to exceed expectations against the most, they did not. However, you always learn more from a loss than a win. I'm still holding out hope. I think that, man, Washington's been close in every game. Washington State almost beat Washington yesterday. I mean, there was like a ton. The good news is like none of these other teams are really that good. They could lose. They showed it yesterday to a lot worse teams than what they're going to play that we need to. So I'm holding out hope. Why not? What else? I mean, and then if we get a bowl game and our guys sit out, okay, that's what happens. But hey, man, it's football. Next year's going to be different. So it's the last year. This is the last four-team thing. I do know that OSU is juiced. They want OSU in there. They want us. They want the ratings. They want us. They want tickets to be sold. They want ESPN desperately wants an Ohio State Michigan game because they're not going to have it for at least 10 years. I think it's 10 years, right, with the new contracts. So I think the football gods, they want us in there. So, yeah, I'm holding out hope. I want to be positive. I'm not going to say we don't deserve it because of blah, blah, blah. Wah, wah, wah. I'm going to cry. I'm an entitled Ohio State fan. That's not me. And hopefully I trigger some people and upset them. And you can be sure to get on Twitter and tell me your thoughts about my statement there. It's at Drew Sample. But that's kind of it, man. I mean, it was fun. I've had a blast this season hanging out with you guys. Yeah, yesterday sucked, but hey, I had a great time watching the game with my cousin who was a Michigan fan. It wasn't embarrassing. I mean, it sucks that we lost, but it wasn't embarrassing. The last 2 years before that was embarrassing. This was like, man, we were right there. Things didn't go our way. It's like even if Kyle McCord takes that sack at the end, I mean, it's like it was exciting when that fumble recovery happened, and then sure that pick at the end was a big punch to the you know what, but here we are, and you know what? Hold out hope. I mean, it's been a great season. We've outperformed. We've worked really hard. We've seen it. We go down there. We see all these guys put in extra work after practice. I think they should hold their heads up high. The defense, yeah, that was not good performance yesterday, but whatever, man. I mean, it's like at the end of the day, like grateful to be here, grateful to talk to you guys. And I think the Buckeyes should be feeling grateful too, man. They had a great season. It's not the way it wanted, but hey, this is the last time it matters like this.
Couple of quick thoughts real quick to your point about any Ohio State fans that say, oh, they don't deserve to go into the playoff and whatnot. Well, that's just simply stupid in my opinion, because if they get into the playoff, they deserve to be there because they wouldn't be in position to get in there if they didn't deserve to be there. And then if you turn around and say, well, if Ohio State doesn't deserve to get in there, who does deserve to get in there? Does Florida State, if they get beat by Louisville in the ACC, do they deserve to get in there? Does Texas, if they get beat by, do they deserve to get in there? Does Alabama as a 2-loss team deserve? No, like you keep on going down the list. Like every year we do this with like, well, did they lose this game? They don't deserve to get in there. Like, okay, well then tell me who deserves to get in there then over an Ohio State team. Or sometimes people will, in other scenarios, people will say, well, Ohio State deserves to be in there over who? Why doesn't this team? So like, I mean, the whole deserving thing is just like it just makes no sense to me. Like if they get in there, they deserve to be there. I promise you that they didn't just like handpick Ohio State and say like we just love Ohio State's ratings, so we're just going to throw them in there. Who gives a shit if people are mad about it? Like if they get in there, they would deserve to be in there. I don't think they will, but just people who say like, they don't deserve to be in there because they lost that game. Like, okay, well, we'll find out if they get left out. Then you're right, they didn't deserve to be in there. But if they get in there, I don't think any Ohio State fan is going to cry about it and say, "Well, they shouldn't be there. We don't deserve to be there." That's silly to me. So, but
yeah, and here's something I want to bring up because this is, you asked Drew, and I did not answer. I said he got out coached, but I did not answer as to whether or not Ryan Day should be fired.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that conversation.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
Absolutely not. Okay. What he did with this team this year, and from my personal perspective, and I know that there are the Ohio State fans out there that go, God damn it, every friggin' year they should be undefeated, they should beat Michigan, they should win the Big Ten championship, and they should make it to the national title game every single year. And folks, that is just not reality. It's just not reality, okay? I went through the John Cooper era, and I saw my fair share of Ohio State teams lose to Michigan that had absolutely no business losing to Michigan. None, okay? And what I saw Ryan Day do this year and the coaching job that he did, feeling that they were going to lose 3 games, Notre Dame, Penn State, and the Rodents, which unfortunately they did, but the fact that he got them to 11-1 with a quarterback controversy going on and a quarterback who, quite frankly, played well enough throughout the season to put you in positions to win. The defense did their job as well up to a certain point. And Kyle McCord up to a certain point. I get it, but still, the coaching job that he did with this team to get them to 11-1, okay, and they're still once again going to make a New Year's Six bowl game, okay? Talk to Clemson fans about the state of their team. Talk to USC fans, talk to even Oklahoma fans, Those schools are not going to a New Year's Six bowl game. They're not. They just did not play well enough this year. Talk to them and see how happy they are right now with their current state. And I think that we can be very spoiled and not honestly try to look at some of the predicaments or positions or situations that other teams, other coaches are in that are very prestigious blue blood football programs and say, you know what? It could be a lot worse. I know that's a tough pill to swallow right now for some of you Buckeye fans. I get it, especially those that did not live through the John Cooper era and you are not used to seeing Ohio State lose 3 games in a row. Unfortunately, I am. I've been in this position before. It still sucks, but having gone through it and seen it before, it is a little bit easier to take right now, okay? It's, once again, it still sucks, but you youngsters out there that don't remember the John Cooper games, once again, where you saw Ohio State get beat by Michigan teams that they had absolutely no business losing to, none, 0-0-0. The fact that Ryan Day is at least losing to Michigan teams that are worthy of losing to, like good, high-ranked Michigan teams, Ryan Day absolutely at least deserves one more year. And next year, if they get beat at home against Michigan, but depending on the postseason situation, like you said, Drew, next year's completely different. 12-team playoff, no more divisions in the conference. So hell, who knows? If what was going down this year is next year, Ohio State and Michigan are rematching for the conference title game. So yesterday's loss would have meant absolutely nothing because the two now get to rematch a week later to play for all of the marbles. But next year, let's just say this situation goes down again, and this is more of a hypothetical. He loses at home to Michigan, but he turns around and beats them in the Big Ten conference title game. Probably a lot of people will be like, okay, all right, man, it's cool, man. You lost at home, but guess what? You beat them for the conference title, and, we got a shot still to go play, or not a shot. We're going to play in the college football playoff because a one-loss conference champion is without a doubt getting into the college football playoff from here on out. However, he beats them but loses, and that's their only loss, but they still go and play for a college football playoff, 12-team. I think, they're still in. So Ryan Day haters, One more year. That's my thought. Dillon, you, sir.
Yeah, certainly firing him now is just it's not going to happen. So and people can wear themselves out, their Twitter fingers talking about it, or wear themselves out to their friends, call them for it, but it's not going to happen. So I mean, I guess if you're interested in wasting your time talking about things that literally will never happen, he's not going to be fired this year. But go ahead, and nor should he, in my opinion, and nor should he. I mean, it seems crazy to me. I understand. I grew up around this program, so I understand what this game means, to Ohio State fans. I fully understand that. And it does mean everything, and it's inexcusable to lose the game 3 times in a row. I fully get that. I actually think that Saturday's loss was in a lot of ways very John Cooper-esque, in my opinion. I think this was the worst Michigan team of the 3 that he's lost to in these last 3 years. I thought this was the most winnable game of the 3. Last year was close because I think, the bare minimum that you ask your defense to do is just not to give up the home run plays. Like, just, hey, defense, just don't give up 75-yard touchdowns and probably be all right. And that's all they had to do last year, and they couldn't do that. So I think last year was close to that as well. But I think this year was probably the most, winnable football game of the 3. 2001 was just like, hey, Ohio State got exposed. They clearly just weren't ready to go 12 rounds and the kind of fight that Michigan was going to bring to them. And like I said, last year I thought was a very winnable game too, but I think this year was probably the worst of the 3 Michigan teams. I think this Michigan team gets beat by 14 points against anybody they play in the playoff, with the exception of maybe Florida State, if they somehow find a way to get Florida State. Like if Georgia gets beat in the SEC title game and Michigan's the 1 seed and Florida State gets the 4 seed, Michigan beats Florida State probably, but with the exception of them, I think Michigan gets beat by 14, 17 points by anybody they play in the playoff. I just didn't walk away impressed with Michigan at all. So I thought this was actually a very John Cooper-esque loss. So inexcusable, losing 3 inexcusable. I get all that. I understand why there's this conversation. I get that, but he's not going to be fired, nor should he. You're right, Andy. Next year's a very big year for Ryan Day, and as it should be. I know a lot of things change with the new conference alignment, obviously, and then the extended playoff, but he's probably going to be coaching for his job in a lot of ways in that Michigan game. And maybe it's a rematch the following week or maybe not. But hey, look, if they get beat by Michigan at home next year, that'll be 4 in a row. They're going to be going to Indianapolis. You want to talk about pressure? They're going to be going to Indianapolis for that game, with the potential to have lost 5 games in a row to Michigan, 2 in the same season for the first time in the history of the rivalry. So, next year's a very big year, and he'll have to play well and in that game and find a way to win that game. But for anybody calling for it now, it's stupid. It's not going to happen. So you're wasting your time.
Well, you know what I like to say. We'll see. We still got playoff hopes. We could still play them again this year. Very unlikely that there is a chance. So you're saying there's a chance, as Lloyd liked to say. Was it Lloyd? Yeah, that was Lloyd.
Yeah.
Dumb and dumb. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. We went a little long today because we had a lot to say about this gosh darn effing loss. So check out Dillon Davis's work at the Delaware Gazette. You can follow me, post all of his articles on his Twitter feed, correct, Dillon? I'd assume you would. So follow him on Twitter.
Yeah,
at
for
Dillon
the most part. Yeah.
Yeah.
The link's in my bio. So
awesome. At Dillon Davis 56. Andy is at Andy's Wired on Twitter. You can check him out and what he writes for the Columbus Wired. I'm at Drew Sample. Come and let me know. I'm already telling people they have some dumb thoughts. They're not happy about it in this private. What were you going to say, Dylan?
No, I just want to say real quick, and I'm sorry, but I just want to thank you guys for having me on as a guest throughout the year. I've truly enjoyed it. Always looked forward to it, and it never disappointed. Just a conversation we're able to have. I appreciate that, and it's been a pleasure doing it. So I appreciate you guys.
Hey, man, seriously, we appreciate you taking time out of your Sundays. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's been a great time, man. And hey, go Browns, man. You're gonna go. They got
go Brownies.
Sunday. Watch about the Browns. Go Brownies.
Yeah,
guys, thanks for. Oh, sorry. Keep going.